Hello everyone. Today we discuss about a new topic from marketing management, that is market. What is market? A setup where two or more parties engage in exchange of goods, service and information is called market. A setup. A setup where two or more parties engaged in exchange of goods, service and information. It may be goods, service and information. It's called a market. A setup where two or more parties engaged in goods, service and information exchange is called a market. And market is a place where two or more parties involved in buying and selling. Market is a place where two or more parties are involved in buying and selling. Buying and selling. And the parties involved in transaction are called seller and buyer. Market is a place where two or more parties are involved in buying and selling. There are two parties involved in transaction. One is buyer and one is seller. So, market is a place where some person goes to buy or sell goods or service or information, and the person who sell is called seller, and the person who buy the service or goods or information is called a buyer. Overall, there are two parties involved in a market, that is seller and a buyer. Both are very important for a market. And the market is a word which is derived from martos. And market are categorized in two parts. One is monopoly market and is monopoly market. What happened in monopoly market and what happened in monopoly market? First of all, we know about the monopoly market. Monopoly market is a market where single seller and many buyers are available. Monopoly market is a market in where single seller and many buyers are available, but in monopoly market there are many seller and single buyer. Monopoly market is the opposite of a monopoly market, where a single seller in monopoly market, but in monopoly market is a single buyer. And in monopoly market, seller decide the price of product. Seller decide the price of product and seller control over the market. Because sellers control over the market. But in monopoly market, they are different from monopoly market. In monopoly market, there are many sellers and single buyer. So buyer control over the market. Right? Buyer decided to purchase it from which and in which price. So buyer control over the market. That is undergoes to the monopoly market. But monopoly market, seller control over the market. Overall, all of the about the market. First of all, market is a setup where two or parties engaged in exchange of goods, service or information. And market is a place. Market is a place where two or more parties involved in buying and selling of a goods, service or information. And there are two parties involved in a market. One is seller and one is buyer. Market is a word which is derived from the martos, and market is categorized under two types, that is monopoly market and is monopoly market. In monopoly market, there is single seller and many buyers, but in monopoly market, many sellers and a single buyer. In monopoly market, seller decide the price of a product, in which price interested to sell the consumer or buyer is decided by the seller. But in monopoly market, buyer control over the market. Buyer control over the market because there are so many, there are single buyer. Due to the single buyer and monopoly market, in single sellers, many buyers. Seller decide the price of product and seller control over the market. Next, we discuss about the types of market. What are the types of a market? First is the physical market. What is physical market? Physical market is a market where buyer can physically meet the seller and purchase the desired product. In physical market, the buyer meet directly and physically to the sellers and purchase the desired product. Example of a physical market, that is the shopping mall, stores. In this place, buyer go to and meet the sellers physically and look overall the product and service, and after all choose the product for purchase. That is the physical market. In physical market, buyer physically meet the sellers and purchase the desired products. Example of physical market, that is shopping malls and stores, retail store, departmental store. There are some example of a physical market. Next, virtual market. Virtual market also known as the online market or internet market. Virtual market. In this market, no physically involved between the buyer and the seller. In virtual market, buyer purchase goods and service through internet. In this market, buyer do not meet the seller as likewise physical market. Virtual market is called as online market or internet market because buyer purchase goods or service through internet. Like nowadays very popularly used by the buyers, that is Flipkart, Amazon. It is an very popular example of a virtual market. Virtual market is also called as the online market or internet market. In this market, buyer purchase goods and service through internet. And next is auction market. Auction market is a market where the price is determined the highest price the buyer is willing to pay. Highest price the buyer willing to pay and the lowest price the seller willing to take. That is, in this market the price is determined depend upon the buyer and the seller willingness, that how much money can a buyer willing to pay, highest money and the seller willing to take the lowest money. Suppose the price of a product 100. That is fixed. That rupees 100 the buyer can willing to pay and the seller willing to take. That is the example of a auction market. That is New York Stock Exchange. Is a example of a auction market. In auction market, price is determined the highest price the buyer willing to pay and the lowest price the seller willing to take. And next is market for intermediate goods. What are the intermediate goods? The intermediate goods which are used to produce other goods. That market for intermediate market. This market sell the raw materials for the final production of other goods. In this market, particularly those type of products sold, product or raw material sold for the final production of other goods. It is called the market for intermediate goods. Next is black market. A black market is a setup or a market where illegal goods are sold. That is like drugs. It is an illegal work or illegal transaction in a market where illegal goods exchanged. It's called the black market. Next is knowledge market. Knowledge market is a setup, is a market which deals in the exchange of information and knowledge. Exchange of information and knowledge is called a knowledge market. In this market, available of exchange of information and knowledge. And last is the financial market. Financial market is a market where trading of securities occurs, and including stock market, bond market, and foreign exchange and derivative market. That is financial market. First is physical market. In physical market, buyers physically meet the sellers and purchase the desired product. That is the example of a physical market. That is the shopping mall and the departmental store, retail store. Next is virtual market. Virtual market also called as the online market or internet market. In virtual market, buyers purchase goods or services through internet. The example of a virtual market is Flipkart, Amazon, very popular. And next is third is auction market. In this market, the price is determined by the willingness of buyer that highestly payable for a product and a willingness of a seller that to take lowestly take for the product. Auction market, it is an example of auction market NYSE, that is the New York Stock Exchange. And fourth is market for intermediate goods. Such type of market, in this market sell raw materials for the final production of other goods, and that type of raw material used to find out the other goods. It is used for the final production of other goods. That is the market for intermediate goods. And five is the black market. Black market is a market where illegal goods are exchanged, and like example of drugs. And six is the knowledge market. Knowledge market is a market where deals in the exchange of information and knowledge. In knowledge market, exchange information and knowledge. And last is the financial market. Financial market is a market where trading of securities occurs, including stock market, bond market, and foreign exchange market, and a derivative market. Or overall the types of a market. Thank you.